Welcome back to part 2 of the government spending in the water industry. We're here with Greg Velz and Zack Perconti, so let's just jump in.
You know, Greg, you talked about just being more conservative at home and more self-aware and conscious. That's one thing that people can do, but this is where you guys are just segueing right into why we want to do this in the first place. What are other things that people can do, maybe from, like, should I be writing letters to someone? Or, you know, how could a person get involved and make a difference?
Well, you have to understand, we're talking about, when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about 2.2 million miles of pipe in this country at this point in time, roughly about. And of course, that's water and sewer, storm pipe. It's a lot. And you're only talking, like you said, Zach was talking about, it's only 148,000 basically water systems in the United States right now. And out of 148,000 water systems, really, you got to remember that almost 80% of them take care of almost 56,000 plants itself, take 80% of the population. So when you look about being conservative about your water usage and your needs, you got to think ahead about what you're doing with it. I think a lot of times we find ourselves just amazed that water is just take for granted. It's there everywhere. We can use it. We don't need to worry about it. But we do it for cooking. We do it for basically our health sanitation needs. We do it for basically our eating, everything we do, showering, whatever it is, has to do with water. And like I said, the water system crashes, then we're in trouble. We need to move forward on that. So I think in a lot of ways, we just need to write our congressman, be involved with your local representatives, talk to them. And this gets down to a city municipal even levels, because you need to make them aware of what's going on. And you need to make sure that you are the voice of the reason out there when it comes to this type of things, because you see all the time they're flushing fire hydrants, they're doing things, they just take it for granted what they're doing. But it's very important to keep an eye on what they are doing and write those letters to your congressman, call your congressman. They want to hear from their voting public what's going on and what's important to you. And like I said, Zach says it's true. Under 20% says they can probably afford this, and that's an estimate. If they start raising the water rates because of what they're trying to do to fix this, it's going to be astronomical. And I mean, you think your electric bill's high, wait till you see what your water bill's high. And right now, we've been very fortunate to have a very low cost water, sewer, reuse water, whatever it may be. The storm charges are very reasonable, very small compared to other parts of the world. So we need to be very aware and conscious. And that goes down to even your family members. Just make everybody understand that water is important, because people brush their teeth. You know, you can brush your teeth and not run the faucet the whole time.
Yeah, my kids no longer do that. I can tell you that.
Or run your shower for 20 minutes while you're on the phone before you get into it.
Right.
So, you know, there's just things that you just think, okay, this makes sense. You know, if you're paying, $20 a bottle for water, you'd make sure you drink that whole bottle of water instead of just throwing half it away or doing whatever. So it's just a content, and it starts from the older all the way down to the young kids. They're probably, I would say, the youth of America, the kids of America are more aware of how precious this stuff is than we are at this point in time. Because we made them aware. So like I said, your congressman, your representative are just dying to have this information given to them so they understand it. And it's important that we reach out. Like I said, just not I and people or anybody that's in the water sewer industry. We are all stewards of water. We need to take care of because it is our most precious resource we have. And we were just, unfortunately, we abuse it all the time. So we just need to look at that.
So one of the things that I
Are you moving on to a next thing?
Well, no.
Okay.
Well, maybe. Why? Go ahead.
Because Zach's involved more from like the policy government side.
Yep.
Greg referenced like write a letter. Mm-hmm. What's the elevator pitch that should be in the letter?
I think the first thing you would do for your 30-second elevator pitch is if there's been a water main break in the local news anytime within the last couple of years, and I'm sure there has been. I'm sure there's been one even within the last month or two. Spotlight that. Make it personal. Connected to something in your communities. We had one WASDA member, not to go down too long of a rabbit hole, at our fly-in, bring photos of a drain and manhole in her community that has been failing for years. Every time she drove by it, she'd take a picture of it. She brought that stack of photos in to show lawmakers, something personal directly from the community. So that's step one, find a way to make it personal. Step two is to just lay out the realities. Talk about how much needs to be done. mention there is $1 trillion that needs to be spent in the next 20 years to maintain levels of service. Hit them with these big eye-popping numbers. You don't need to throw out in a lot, but just one or two really illustrates the magnitude of the problem that we're facing. And then the third thing, which you close out with, is this. We can help. You can help. This is not a complicated solution. There's a lot of technical stuff we can certainly get into that can help. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that we need is just investment. Give industry and give municipalities the resources they need to fix the problem. If Congress does that, we will make a lot of progress on this, but we can't really do anything else without the funding.
And a lot of those, the data that you're talking about to me, that Greg was talking about as far as the water infrastructure was supposed to be 25 years old. It's now 100 years old. That's 3 or 4 times. Yeah. It's not 3 or 4 years older.
Outside
it's 3
of
or
its
4
lifespan.
times past its lifespan. And 6.4. Tell me if I'm right here, Greg. $6.4 billion gallons of water being basically wasted every single day.
And our usage back in 2020 when the reports come out was about 42 billion gallons we use a day. So just think how much that 6.4 billion is of that number. And that number is only in climbing, because the problem about it is the government doesn't really want to tell you about things. So they do the reports in about 5-year increments to let you know what it is. So we're expecting to see new reports in 2025, which I feel will be pretty alarming when you look at it. Now, what people don't understand is 80% of the water that we use in the United States come out of ground surface, reservoirs, lakes, the ocean, rivers, whatever it may be. So when Zach's talking about, all this stuff that's in the waterways now, we got to be very careful about the expense of trying to clean those up. The other part is that 20% really comes out of wells or the aquifer. And right now with what's happening right now with the world and rain supply and droughts and everything else, it could become a real crucial problem we have. And like I said, we need every drop we can get, let alone try to lose that kind of water volume on a daily basis. And as we bring more people back to the United States, including citizens, including factories, that 42 billion gallons of water a day is going to only increase. I suspect the estimates are going to be close to 50 billion gallons a day we're using right now. That's a lot of water.
And when you talk about the 6.4 billion gallons lost, is that generally from leaky pipes?
Yeah, 6.4 is a combination of breaks, estimates and breaks. It's a combination of pipe failing and just leaking right now because you have to remember, like I said, a third of our water source right now is basically about 37% is under 30 years old. Most pipes back years ago were only, like I said, 25 to 30 year life expectancy. They have gotten better. However, that brings you to the alarming part that basically 33% are between 31 and 60 years old. And now you got 61 to 100 covers 11, and we are growing fast over that 100 point real quick. And you got ground movement settlement, the joints restraints. A lot of people used to use thrust blocks. They are deteriorating, of course, with ground movement. So there's just a lot of problems out there. And those losses are from mains to meters to your house. And those are all parts of the pieces of the puzzle that you pay for when your water bills. Like I said, Zach brought it up. Less than 20% think they can even recover type of funding to fix their infrastructure or their water mains. So you're going to have the government help us out, state revolving funds. And the government right now, I think it's only about 4% of the money that they are basically allocating is from federal government. So the rest comes out of the state, individual taxpayer, the usage bills. It's pretty large. And that used to be almost 60%. The federal government used to cover almost 60% years ago back in the 80s. Now it's gone down to 4%. That's why Zach mentioned the state revolving funds are so important, because that's money that we can keep rolling over and keep moving forward. But we have to have the stimulus of the money coming from the federal government to keep that going. And that's what's very important right now. And let's face it, the longer you get the money, keep the money in the Fed's hands, the more it seems to disappear. As Zach was talking about earmarking those monies and cutting budgets, you need to write your congressman and tell them, hey, cut it from anywhere you want, but don't take it out of the water infrastructure budget. It doesn't.
Right now, there's actually a proposal in the House's Interior and Environment Appropriations Bill that would cut nearly $2 billion in next year's funding for the clean water and drinking water state revolving fund programs, which is just absolutely unthinkable. I mean, you would completely be undercutting all of the progress we made with the infrastructure law if you were to sign that into law. And make no mistake, projects all across the country are counting on dollars that have not been appropriated yet to proceed. There have been a number of studies that have been put out that have analyzed states' 2024 intended use plans. And, they had an expectation that when the BIL was passed, we'd see a certain level of annual appropriations funding. Those plans were written with that in mind. So if you were to cut that funding, you would see in some congressional districts more than 70 different projects that would suffer because of losing out on that federal investment. And like Greg said, to make matters worse, Congress has then taken most of that money that's left and proposed to earmark it for specific projects, which no doubt are important to their communities, but does not, one, conform to those intended use plans. So they're not necessarily being prioritized the way they should be. And number two, those monies are all going out as grants. So we don't go back into the state revolving funds, right? We're losing out on money that we desperately need every year to come because of how they're doing this. Essentially, what they would do here is, they leave over 40 states, I think, with less than $1 million in annual investment that they can use according to their intended use plans next year. It's just a catastrophically bad idea. It's a move in the wrong direction.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but won't one of the things that happens when that funding decreases or is taken away is that they'll be left with only Band-Aid solutions? I mean, it costs more to do like a bigger overhaul. We want to replace water mains. They have to dig up streets. It's expensive. If they have such little funding, they're just going to slap a Band-Aid on it because that's all they're going to be able to afford to do. It's not actually solving. It's like a Band-Aid on a bullet hole type situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've been doing that too long now. That's our problem. We just been making a quick fix, put a Band-Aid on a problem that is only getting larger and larger. To kind of bring this into an observation of what's going on, the ASCE, which stands for the American Society of Civil Engineers, in 2021 gave the infrastructure of the United States a C-. Water was a C-. Basically, our wastewater was a D, stormwater was a D, and the overall score was C in all 17 categories they judged us on. This is the first time in 20 years that we actually got past a D. We have never had a C- in 20 years. And this is for our own civil engineering group in the United States, and graded us compared to the rest of the world and products that we have out there as far as the quality of our water systems. So I just showed you how bad it really has gotten because of the Band-Aid approach we've been using since basically the 80s. And that's when the funding really started going backwards. Water infrastructure or infrastructure itself is the only federal fund that's going backwards all the years as far as being allocated funds to. It's not going forward. It's going backwards in the amount of money that the federal government's giving it. And like I said, the Band-Aid approach has been what they've been working on, and they're going to continue working until that becomes that Band-Aid blows off and it becomes a real mess. And we're headed that direction in a real quick manner. I expect to see, like I said, if we can make it to 2030 without a catastrophic disaster, I'd be surprised. And what I mean by that, several mains and large older cities, municipalities breaking and coming apart. And there's ways to fix it, but there is funding that's needed to be done.
Yeah, when Greg said make it personal, I immediately thought of over on JFK. I bet if you tore that street up, there'd be about 6 repair clamps within a couple block. The water comes up and everybody's all in a tizzy. They fix it quickly, get people back to their daily lives, but they'll be back there again this winter.
And probably about 90% of them are made by AY McDonald.
Yeah. And you talked about, getting in touch with their advocacy groups. So, obviously WASDA is a big advocate of this. Give us just a real brief, explanation as far as what WASDA is all about and kind of what their goal and mission is for this and other parts.
Right. Well, as I said, WASDA was founded in 1979. We're basically about 145 water and sewer based type of companies, including manufacturers and distributors. Our main goal is to educate and inform about what waterworks is, the sewer systems, the storm systems, provide resources for industry communications and dialogue. In other words, forums. As we said, we've been having the Washington Summit, which we just finished up in July the 10th of this year, and we're planning on another one coming up on April the 22nd through the 24th of 2024. where we go to the Hill, we talk to our representatives, our congressmen, our representatives about our needs out there. And basically, we are the voice of the water and sewer distributors, basically about legislation and what's going on. So we have a website we're working on that is constantly being updated with government affairs about what's going on in Washington to help the members of our organization understand more what needs to be done and what needs to be sent out to your local representatives. And this doesn't only go from a federal level, this goes to a state level. You got to get involved. I mean, you can sit and complain about things, but unless you actually are doing something to help, then no one's listening to you. And that's why we go every year to try to talk about this. We also provide programs and services to recruit and retain industry members. Our workforce in this country, as far as when it comes to construction, is really hurting right now because we've done a very poor job of making construction, water infrastructure, construction kind of a exciting job to be a part of, but it does pay very well. There are very highly talented people involved in this thing, but we could get all the funding we want, but if we're not working on trying to educate and train workers for this industry, we can get all the money we want. It doesn't matter. We don't have the workforce to do it. And that's one of the things we do go to speak about is the education of the trades that are involved in this industry, in the water and sewer industry. We try to get into more of a mentorship programs, 2-year programs, technical programs, and get it out of the 4-year universities where the Pell Grants are sitting at right now. That doesn't really help us at all when it comes to, I mean, you can go out and get a 4-year degree in poetry, but what's that going to do for you? And not to say anything wrong with poets, but I'd rather have technical trained people out there and just basically maintain a highly effective association for the industry. So we're a voice of the water and sewer distributors of America. We are a voice about what we do in this country. We're involved in a lot of different associations. We're part of NUCA, which is the National Utility Contractor Association. We're part of American Water Works Association, AWWA. So we're involved in a lot of things to bring it, because we really are, if you look at it, we are the experts on the water and sewer needs of this, because this is our job of this country. And we just need to bring that out. So we need to stay in front of our local representatives, stay in front of our federal representatives, stay in front of our association members, stay in front of all kinds of organizations. I've spoke many times to local organizations and municipalities, just talking to them about the needs out there, because we do a very poor job on telling everybody where we're at with this situation, because we really don't want to talk about it. That's our problem. We don't want to discuss it. We don't want to understand the cost of this, what it's going to take to fix this. And it can be fixed, but it takes an effort, and we have to work together as a team to do it. So that's kind of what water, WASDA does. Like I said, it's a very strong organization, and we are the stewards of water, and we need to go out there and promote that.
And, I want to just piggyback on something Greg said there. So, I came aboard earlier this year as directing WASDA's government affairs program. And one of the reasons that I was so proud and happy to get these guys into DC at their first Washington summit was because, as he said, these folks are the industry experts. And many of your listeners are industry experts, right? You all understand and know the realities and the technical knowledge of water utilities and water infrastructure in a way that all that same information about. So when you come to DC, when you get involved with WASDA as an advocate, you are coming in as an expert. You're coming in with a position of strength. Even if you've never been here before, even if you're new to the world of politics and policy, you have all of the background knowledge you need to be a successful advocate. And Congress and the administration are hungry for knowledge. They know they need this information that you have in order for things like the bipartisan infrastructure law to be successful. They just don't necessarily have that in front of them, right? So part of my job and part of WASDA's role is to connect the experts with government and get that knowledge where it needs to be. Just yesterday, right now, I'm looking at a request for information from the Environmental Protection Agency about the state of product availability for water infrastructure. What's produced domestically? What's not produced domestically? What are domestic manufacturers looking to start producing, right? All of these different materials that they need information about in order to make the federal investment in water infrastructure a success, right? Right now, they're currently writing regulations for the Build America, Buy America Act implementation. That law is going to be with us for quite some time. It doesn't just extend to the infrastructure law. It goes in perpetuity, at least for the time being, for all federally assisted infrastructure projects.
So Zach, can you expand just a little bit on what that law means for maybe somebody
Sure.
I mean, it's a catchy phrase and it's like you think you know what it means, but what does it really mean to us?
Yeah, no, great question. This is a big phrase that I feel like everybody in this industry should be familiar with, because it's important that Congress and the administration get this one right. It is going to be around for quite some time. So the Build America, Buy America Act was a component of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, but it extended beyond just the BIL, IIJA. Essentially, what this law does in one sentence is that requires that all federally assisted infrastructure projects be built using domestic materials, right? So virtually all of the materials used on that project have to be sourced within the United States. And there are some differing qualifications around that as to, what percentage of a certain product has to be made in the United States in order for it to count as domestic. There are some products that they term construction materials that have to be 100% domestic. You get into a third category of American iron and steel, which is a whole different, beast, but it's one that thankfully has a little more of a longstanding precedent. It's actually probably the easiest to understand out of the rest of the bill because we have been working around that for so long. But essentially, this domestic preference law is completely rewriting the water infrastructure and all American infrastructure supply chains. And in order for American infrastructure to be successful, Congress and the administration need to be working in tandem here. Congress needs to exercise appropriate oversight over the project's implementation, and the administration needs to make sure that they're getting all of these definitions right. And one, that means making sure that a product is defined as industry would define it and not some nebulous definition that we need to work around. And number two, making sure that there's appropriate flexibility for everyone involved. So domestic manufacturers need the flexibility to ensure that their products are compliant. They also need transparency to know exactly what they need to do to change processes to stay compliant. Importers need the ability to change up their supply chain, bring in any raw materials that go to domestic manufacturers, for example, and make sure they're sourcing them from somewhere appropriate. And I think above all, we need to make sure that the material is actually available. And so that extends to everything from those raw material inputs to if a product isn't made domestically and, the timeline for that happening is several years out, or there's some sort of regulatory or market impediment to making that happen, Congress and the administration need to cooperate to make sure we can still get the stuff we need, right?
Yeah, don't hold up major projects because it's not available domestically or something like that.
It's a bit of a delicate dance because you do want to support the domestic industry. You have to under the terms of the law, but you also want to make sure that we're not blocking entire projects because one thing has fallen through the cracks.
Right.
It's worth noting that if you can't get that, then it doesn't matter how much you do for domestic manufacturers because they won't be able to sell product. If projects aren't happening, product won't move. This request for comment is the perfect sort of thing that I like to get our members involved in. We are going to be soliciting information from WASDA members and from other folks in the industry to get that expert knowledge of what exactly the supply chain looks like right now. And then once we have that, we'll be communicating that over to the administration so they have the info they need to be successful.
Well, there's definitely a passion for this from you two, which is very much appreciated because I don't think people understand how extremely important it is, and how much our future depends on the infrastructure, specifically the water infrastructure, moving forward. And one of the things that we say here at AY McDonald is we want to leave this place better than when we got it. I think that should be kind of the goal of people in general, and that's what we're going to do. As long as we keep this water infrastructure bill moving forward and people continue to write to their congresspeople, people continue to, voice their opinion and their concern about this moving forward. I think it's extremely important.
Find a local association,
Yep.
get involved.
Yep. absolutely.
Tell your kid to turn the damn faucet off when they're brushing their teeth. I can't wait to get home and lay down the law.
Yeah.
You're thirsty? I don't care.
Yeah. The biggest thing is what we said before, just get involved.
Yep.
I mean, this is so important to the future of this country, to our kids, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. We've done a fair job up to this point. Now we're doing a really bad job, and we really need to do a better job for the future of this country. And that goes to every citizen, to every manufacturer, to everything involved in this thing. And like I said, the best way to do this is to get involved. Write to your congressman, call them, get involved with it. I would be doing a disjustice. I didn't tell you that we're going to have a 2024, WASDA Summit on April the 22nd through the 24th. For those members, I'd love to have you all attend. We're going to make this a bigger and better event. Last year, we had over 45 attend. We've had over 50 meetings on the Hill. And some of those meetings were actually probably more, but we've met congressmen and representatives in the hallways and talked to them and given them our literature about it. We have 3 main points we go there every year with. This last year was about getting the BABA ruling cleared up so we can figure out how to get this money moving forward. It was on the educational part of trying to train the workforce in this industry. And the last part was probably on basically working with earmarks and just cutting funds, making sure that they don't do that, because that's what we're really worried about right now. So there's just major things we were asking about to get straightened out. And we basically bring 3 points to them and try to meet them. And it's amazing when they sit there and listen to you. Most of the time, they'll tell you, I have no idea. I just had no idea about this. Because they all know it. They need to hear it from us. They need to hear it from people involved in this industry about what is going on in the United States. And they're actually shocked about it. We've done a lot of on-site factory visits with our representatives. We've done job site visits so they get a better understanding of what's going on. We've done where we turn around and show them things that are happening in the country as far as breaks, what's happening, the amount of money it takes to fix these things. They're just really struggling to try to figure out how to use their talents up there on the Hill to work to help this country out also. And by us taking time out of our lives, out of our jobs to go up there and speak to them about this is very important. So even at a local level, even if you just work for a company that is in the water and sewer industry, you really need to write a letter. Just let them know that you're concerned and that you have a voice and you want to be heard about this problem we're having in this country. Because volume speaks. And like I said, the unfortunate thing is what we're spending now is nothing compared to what's going to be if we don't start spending money now, because it's a pay me now or pay me later. And the later is going to be very expensive. And
absolutely.
We don't need more Band-Aids, I'll put it that way. As you said.
Right.
The passion is there in this industry. The knowledge is there. I promise you, everybody listening, a lot more about this stuff than you think you do. Share that knowledge and that expertise with your local officials, your state officials, your federal lawmakers. I and the folks at WASDA are available to help make those connections. We would love to have you get involved. We need as many as possible to spread this message. But if you have questions in the future, feel free to reach out to us as well. And we're more than happy to talk and give you information, help you become a more effective advocate for water infrastructure.
Yeah, that's I love that call to action at the end there, because I think it's one thing to share all this information, but then it's like a whole nother level to try and get people a little inspired and want to take action and get involved. So I think hopefully that's something that will come out of this podcast, is that they've listened to you, Greg and Zach, and they're feeling a little bit fired up and
are there websites to go to that, we can direct people to?
Yeah, the WASDA website's out there right now. You can go ahead and go to WASDA.com and find out about what's going on out there. I know Zach has a website that he can work with also. That's out there. We're doing a different type of social medias, and I'd be happy to send those to you so you can put it in this podcast. They're going back and forth. But I guess the best way I'm going to finish this thing is say you can sit and watch the game or be part of the game. And I'd say just get off the bench and get involved in this thing, because this is going to be a major World Series that we're going to be struggling here if we don't turn around and get this water straightened out and get involved. So I'll send that, but WASDA.com is a great place to go. We have questions out there, and we are putting up posts from Washington right now, what's going on out there, and the spending, also advocacy that you can join. AWWA is great. Also, there's a lot of different sources out there you can go to. But like I said, the biggest thing is just get off the bench and get part of the game and write your congressman and tell them that you'd like to have an appointment with them or speak to them or whatever he needs to do. Just make them aware that you're very interested in getting this resolved and fixed.
Zach, any resources you want to share?
Absolutely. The first place that I'd point folks to is, like Greg said, WASDA's website. You'll see a lot of great resources up there. There's a lot of content that I've produced or helped produce on our social media page that kind of distills and talks about what's happening in Washington and gives you some of that information you need to share. You can also look at some other associations like AWWA, like NUCA, the National Utility Contractors Association, like NACWA, NACWA, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. There's lots of different groups in this space that have produced materials that folks can pull for reference. I would say that once you've looked at one or two, you'll probably get a pretty good sense of what's going on and what sort of information is out there. The really important thing to do is don't just gather that information, but share it. Talk with your lawmakers, but also, frankly, something I should have said earlier, talk with your friends, your family, your neighbors, talk with people you work with. I mean, this is something that should be more of a topic of conversation in American society. People just don't know. That's the big thing. You come to Washington, they don't even know. And once we get that conversation moving and we get more people talking about it, that's really the way we're going to make progress here. Water cannot continue to be out of sight and out of mind. Right? We can't keep only acting on this once we've hit that crisis point. If we really want to make a change and build on the work we've done with the bipartisan infrastructure law, with IIJA, we need to keep this conversation going. And, there's only so much that we can do at the association level to make that happen. We're really counting on all of you to help us with that.
Oh, I feel like this is my most proud episode
There you
ever.
Go. There you go.
We had to say so little because you knew so much, which was awesome. So, yeah, I think that was a great way to kind of sum it all up. I think we have a lot to think about, And just Greg and Zach, thank you so much for giving us your time. If we have other folks out there that have ideas for future podcast episodes, you can send those to us at ayafterhours@aymcdonald.com. Thank you for tuning in, watching, listening, wherever you're at, and tune into our socials.
Oh, I thought you were going to miss that.
Oh, please.
Got that.
I'm a pro.
You are.